I stumble and I fall. Anybody relate to that? Yeah. Stumbling and falling. I shared last week, and I won't redo my talk from last week, but I did share last week about what I personally have been navigating with what's going on in the world and what's going on in my own life. And that space of how do we move forward? How do we move forward, and where are we moving forward from? And last week I spoke about the difference between reacting and responding. Reaction being the thing that's arising out of fear and doubt and worry about our interaction with the shadow. And responding being when we're arising, what's rising within us is coming from love, from that place of wholeness. And as I was sitting with that for myself this week, because you know, I only preach what I need to learn. So as I was sitting with that myself this week, I realized that the place, the space that I had lost touch with, believe it or not, was with my zeal. And zeal is something I know a lot about, if you haven't already figured that out. But I had lost touch with my zeal. And I started to sort of dive into that because on some level it had been so intuitive for me my whole life, my zeal, something that is sort of there. I was like, wow, how do you actually, what is this? How do you navigate this? Because I talked about the benefits of self-care and resting and being kind to yourself and all of that. But there is a point that I felt myself falling into where resting and getting enough sleep and being gentle and doing a news diet and all of those things shifts out of being restorative and becomes degenerative, where we become even more lethargic and more stuck and more downhearted and unable to be able to move forward. So the talk today is Zealalicious. Because you can feel the shift too. Ellen, I want to thank Ellen, there she is. She pointed out to me the eclipse, which was amazing, wasn't it? Mm-hmm. And metaphysically, what's happening with the eclipse, as Ellen shared with me, and I was like, oh wow, it is the light emerging from the seeming darkness. It is the movement of something obfuscating what we know is the light that we are. And I talked about us being the daybreak. And in the eclipse, we had this energetic thing going on, and we're on the other side of it. Can you feel the difference? I have felt a difference. And that could just be because I have shifted me, because we know that where does it all begin? Right here. So in my choice to shift, it is shifting. So, this is the first thing that came to mind as I was struggling. I thought about, all of a sudden, there I love Lucy, there she was, Lucille Ball going, vitamin. Do you poop out at parties? Are you on, and then she switches it, do you pop out at parties? Are you on Popular? For those of you who don't remember this, you need to YouTube it, because it's a bit of comic classic genius. But this search for zeal, this search for energy, this search for the thing that's going to keep you going, right, is not something that's new to any of us. This is something that we're all striving for, to be able to access the energy that is there for us. So Charles Fillmore has this beautiful quote, which I think is just wonderful. Zeal is the great universal force that impels us to spring forward in a field of endeavor and accomplish the seemingly miraculous. Don't we love that? Seemingly miraculous. Because we know that in consciousness, all things are possible. So what may seem like a miracle in time and space, in the mind of God, in the mind of the divine that we are the living embodiment of, it's just everyday normal. It is spiritual law in effect. And he goes on to say, it is the inward fire that urges us onward. This is the best part of the quote. Regardless of the intellectual mind of caution and conversation. How many times have you had the spark of something and you literally talked yourself out of it? Literally, your mental mind stepped in, jumped in, and was like, oh, that's a really dumb idea. Do I really think I can do that? Oh, that's not, no, it's too much, it's too overwhelming. Oh, no. All that mental chatter can be instantaneous to when we have a spark that is the divine inspiration moving through us, regardless of the intellectual mind of caution and conversation. Who remembers this book? And if you don't know this book, you should read this book. Maybe I'll do a class on this book. Wouldn't that be fun? It's such a great book. So my relationship with my own experience and understanding of my zeal was transformed through my reading this book, The Tao of Pooh. This book by Benjamin Hoff transformed my understanding of who I was. Because if you haven't figured it out by now, who I am is Tigger. Right? I am Tigger. I am the bouncy, bouncy, fun. Yeah, bouncy, fun. I mean, look at Tigger. This is what Tigger is. Look at the body language, right? Look at what this is. It's all that energy, it's all that enthusiasm, it's all that vitality, it's all that dynamic stuff. And he pounces on everything. He just jumps on stuff. He jumps on things and people and situations, right? That is the Tigger energy. And I didn't understand it at first. I didn't understand what that was within me because I was missing a really essential component of zeal. So the Oxford Dictionary defines it as great energy in pursuit of an objective. Can we all relate to that? There's lots of ways to be in pursuit of an objective. Yes? There's lots of ways to be in pursuit of what you want to accomplish. So my very first job was at a cashier in a supermarket that looked much like this. Right? Cash registers look the same. It was during the late 70s, but this is a little earlier time period, but the supermarket was an old-style supermarket, and it was my very first job, and I took it very seriously. Very, very seriously. And it was a crazy, busy supermarket. The lines looked like this all the time. From the minute the doors opened until like we would shut the gates and there would still be lines, and then we'd work for another hour to move through the lines. It was always insanely busy. And I thought my objective was to move the line along as quickly as possible. And I worked at that objective. I worked at that objective so intensely with great, I mean, you would think from the Oxford definition, I had zeal. I worked it. And I had my manager to come over to me at one point and say to me, you know, DeeAnn, you're great. Your cash register is always to the penny. You know, you're doing a great job. Could you slow down a little? I looked at her and I was like thinking, in all of my 14-year-old knowledge and wisdom, 13-year-old knowledge and wisdom, are you crazy? Do you see the line? I was so focused on the line that I wasn't taking time to actually interact with people. I was just moving along. I had bruises on my palm from that old-style cash register. I would have bruising on my palm because I took that objective so seriously. And even when she told me to slow down, I couldn't. I couldn't because I thought it was insane. I really thought she was like, what is her problem? She's a manager. There's a line. People want to get out of the store. I was missing the most important part of zeal. I was missing the most important component of what it means to actually live in your zeal. And what do you think it was? I heard it. It was joy. I wasn't taking joy in what I was doing. I wasn't invested in the joyous experience of any of it. If I had been invested in the joy of the experience, I would have still moved the line. There's also an endless line. That's your life, folks. It's an endless life. There's always going to be something else coming up, right, that needs your attention. You're never going to be done. And I was missing that element of joy. And I was missing it so much that it really took me until I read the Tao of Pooh and I caught Tigger. Then I understood what I was missing within myself. So Charles Fillmore says enthusiasm is another word for zeal. And what I love about the word enthusiasm is that the root of the word enthusiasm comes from theos, meaning possessed by a god. Isn't that awesome? Yep. When you're in your zeal, you are the living embodiment of the divine itself. You are the thing itself. That's the inspiration, the very breath of the divine is breathing you. That was the part that I was missing. I was caught in the Oxford understanding of zeal. I was missing this larger component of what else is possible within ourselves. That, no matter what we're doing, folks, it's possible to be bouncy. It really is. It's possible to be open. Do you see how open his body language is? It's all power poses. We've been talking about power poses here. Tigger is always in a power pose. Always there, present, very in the now. So there's a quote in the Psalms, which is from David, King David, where he says, "The zeal of thy house hath eaten me up." Because zeal can also be used in a way that is degenerative. So, right, in a way that doesn't actually serve us, in a way that isn't actually making this world a better place for everyone. The zeal of thy house hath eaten me up. And David is referring to the high priests who are taking the instructions of the Torah literally to the letter. They want it done exactly to the letter. And what he's saying is the zeal of you wanting it to be so rigid is eating up the spiritual component, the truth of what the teachings in the Torah are all about. So this quote appears again in the Gospel of John, and it's because Jesus and the money changers, we know that scene when he shows up at the temple, again, the Jewish priests of the temple are being very rigid about what's allowed and what's not allowed, and he overturns the money changers. He overturns everything because the zeal of the house is eating up the spiritual nurturing that is the truth of what zeal is actually about. So Charles Fillmore describes it as the zeal faculty becoming so active intellectually that it has consumed the vitality and left nothing for spiritual growth. How many of us in here understand that? Yeah. And the mind is going and going and going and going and going and going and going. And the mental activity of what it's supposed to look like, any of your shoulding that you do on yourself, that is the zeal of thy house eating you up. That's zeal working in a way, because get this, folks, your zeal is always working. You don't get to turn it on or off. It's always on, because it's who you are. It is the essence of who you are. So how you're using zeal is the place where you get to exercise your dominion and your choice. So is your zeal eating your house up? Is it undermining the foundation of who you're called to be and how you want to show up in the world? So for the Pooh fans, this is Rabbit. And Rabbit is the one who likes to control things, which I can really relate to as well. Rabbit likes to control things. He likes things to be a certain way. And he loves to go around 100 Acre Wood and create rules. He loves to create rules. That's what he does over and over and over again. But there's a bit of a self-serving nature to his rule making, because he wants all of his rules to make it work for him. And they always end up kind of blowing up in his face, which is part of why we love Rabbit. So in the Tao of Pooh, I love what Benjamin Hoffy has this conversation between Pooh and Piglet. "Rabbit's clever," said Pooh thoughtfully. "Yes," said Piglet, "Rabbit's clever, and he has brain." "Yes," said Piglet, Rabbit has brain. There was a long silence. I suppose, said Pooh, that is why he never understands anything. When we are operating just from our mental capacity, we are cutting off the truth of who we actually are. We are not being devoted to the thing that will actually source us and nurture us. We're being devoted to the form itself, that it has to look a certain way. We're paying attention to the smoke, and we're not actually focused on the fire. Charles Fillmore often describes zeal as the inner spark, the fire. That's where we want to place our attention, not on all the form that we think it needs to take. Zeal's job is to just get us moving forward. That's its job. We have other powers that we access in terms of shaping how that movement actually looks. But zeal's job is just to get us up and going. That's its job. And then we have Eeyore, sweet Eeyore, who, if you don't know the story of Winnie the Pooh, he loses his tail all the time. And it gets stuck back on with a thumbtack. And there's things where he doesn't have a tail and things where he does have a tail. And Eeyore is an underdeveloped zeal because he's always expecting everything to work out for the worst. Always. So his quote, no matter, because he has his tail, most likely lose it again. He's caught in the lethargy of what he thinks the world is. And even when something as joyous as his tail being there arrives, he doesn't let himself enjoy it. He's already ahead of it. Right? The thing about Eeyore that's great is that Eeyore understands the changeable, mutable nature of the experience that we're in. He understands that things come and they go and things don't stay the same, right? Most likely I'll lose it again. But he's not saying it from a place of peace. He's not saying it from a place of anchored understanding, like, oh, I'm sure I'll lose it again. That's very different. So we all do this. We all live into, and we all feel like this sometimes. I know I felt like it last week, right? It's just going to happen again. It's this cycle, this cycle, this cycle, this cycle, again and again. We are spiritual beings having a human experience. We have to remind ourselves of that over and over and over and over and over and over and over again. That what is happening in time and space is an expression. It is not the thing itself. Form follows thought. Not the other way around. When we are reacting to something, our thoughts are being shaped by the form that we are engaged with. We are reversing what the co-creative dynamic actually is. It is the fact that our thoughts are and when I say thoughts, I don't mean just our mind. I'm talking about our beingness, in our mental, emotional, spiritual, physical beingness. That is what is creating the form that we experience. So when we are in zeal, zeal is anchored in now. Right now. Because all it is the beginning of something, the spark of something, the thing that gets us off our feet, out of the chair, out of our bed, out of our stuck patterns, out of our old understanding of who we think we are. It is the spark that shoots us into a different consciousness. So there's a nowness to it, and can you also hear there's a bit of future to it? But there is no past in it. There is nothing in it about yesterday. So if we're stuck in yesterday, if we're stuck in what was, then we are not allowing ourselves to access our zeal in a way that is truly available to us. Because it's right now that your zeal can ignite something within you. So how do we actually do this? How do we actually activate this thing in a way so that it will serve us? So that it is, we're finding ourselves on a regenerative cycle rather than on something that is degenerative. So I love this quote. Zeal is the mighty force that incites all things to action, the eternal urge behind all things. Not some things, all things. So that means that no matter what you are in the midst of, no matter what experience you are having, no matter what, there is an eternal urge for something new to be arising from within that space. So what do? We just move forward in any way we can. It's really that simple. We just move forward in any way we can. I have shared that I have been in moments in my life where the only way forward that I had available to me was to be grateful that I was breathing. Like, that was it. That was enough. That was all I could handle. And even that was a stretch. Even that was a serious reach. But that was what I was moving forward to. And could I move from there to being forward, that I could be grateful that I could actually move forward and get my feet on the floor and actually stand up instead of spending all that time lying around in my bed, completely immobilized and paralyzed. It is the way we move forward in any way we can. And then the intention that we hold is that we are looking for joy. We are looking for the joy, even if it's just this glimpse of joy. Because we know that wherever we place our attention grows in consciousness. Wherever we place our attention grows in consciousness. So if you are placing your attention on all the things that are wrong in your life, all the things that are wrong in this world, guess what, folks? You're feeding the beast. You know that tale, the Native American tale of the two wolves? Which one will grow? It depends on which one you feed. So what are you feeding? When we look for the joy, we are feeding the divinity that we are. We are allowing ourselves to anchor our roots in that space, in that place, in that consciousness. So, and zeal, by the way, I totally didn't mention this to start, is one of the 12 powers. And in Unity, we believe that the 12 powers together comprise the abilities and the capacities within us as the human expression of the divine to be able to express and show up in our Christ Buddha nature. That those 12 powers are available to us to use. So zeal is a tool, it's a capacity that I have within me to be able to access my Buddha-ness, my Christ-ness, my Atman presence-ness, my is-ness. So Linda Martello-Whitsitt has a new book, well, it's not a new book, but it's a newer book on the 12 powers. That she's a Unity minister, she's actually the head of Silent Unity, and it's called Divine Audacity. And it's really a great look at the 12 powers. And she talks about, which I've mentioned, this devotion piece. This idea that zeal is about devotion. Zeal is about where are you placing your attention, your time, your focus. Where are you looking? What are you looking for? So those are the questions I want you to start. What are you devoted to? Really devoted to? Not the things you say you're devoted to, but what is actually taking up your time? What really takes up your time? Are you devoted to your emails? Most of us are. Are you devoted to Facebook? Most of us are. Right? What are you devoted to? Because it's taking up your energy, your focus, your talents, your gifts. And then she talks about audacity. I love that. So zeal is linked to audacity. Isn't that fun? And the definition that I found for audacity, which I loved, intrepid boldness. And then I love the second line, bold or arrogant disregard of normal restraints. And here's the catch for zeal, right there in that second line. Bold or arrogant disregard of normal restraints. Nobody wants to be arrogant. None of us want to appear arrogant. None of us want anybody thinking that we're arrogant. So what do? We play small. We don't allow our audacity which is ours, uniquely, powerfully, magnificently, to reveal itself powerfully, magnificently, and uniquely. Because audacity, by its natural expression, is absolutely going to be outside the norm, outside your comfort zone, outside society's comfort zone. It's going to be outside of all of that, but it is never outside of the divine. Bold, arrogant. Zeal is the affirmative impulse of existence. I love that too. Affirmative impulse of existence. The affirmative energy of it. Rooted and grounded in joy, enthusiasm, the inspiration of the divine. And its command, go forward. That's it. It's that simple. It doesn't say go forward and take a left and then a right and then you're going to go straight for a while. It is just go forward. That's it. Just engage with yourself in a new way. Step out. So Tigger again, he has this hilarious quote. Once in a while, someone amazing comes along, and here I am. I want everybody to say that together with me. Let's all say that together. Ready? 1, 2, 3.
Once in a while, someone amazing comes along, and here I am.
Okay, everybody stand up. We're going to really do this. I want everybody to really, here I am. Because it's uncomfortable, right? We think we're being arrogant. We're not. All right, let's say it together. Ready? 1, 2, 3.
Once in a while, someone amazing comes along, and here I am.
Oh, how does that feel? Yeah. All right, everybody have a seat. Now that is zeal. And did you see how simple that was to access your zeal? Because we just said yes to it. We said yes to letting it show up, and we allowed ourselves to really commit to it. To just something as simple as a power pose that we're like, I am here. Something that simple can move you forward. I love that though. Look at him. How he steps out. It's just hilarious. So I've shared this picture before. This is like my mantra right now. This is my screensaver, right? Because when we are allowing zeal to be what zeal is, when we get out of the way, we are that fish, just shoo! We have no idea where, we don't know where that fish is going, but he's going. She's going, it's going. Let's be gender neutral, positive. The fish is going. And then we allow the other powers to step in. This is where faith comes in, which is another power. This is where wisdom comes in, another power. This is where when we want to sustain our zeal, we need to access our life as a power. We need to access power as one of our capacities. This is where, but zeal is the thing that launches us forward. And we're so afraid that we're going to look goofy, that we're going to be too much, that somebody might not like us. The way Rabbit is always having a problem with Tigger. Why does he always have to pounce around? Why does he have to be like that? He's devoted to the rules rather than devoted to the essence of who we are. And then those other powers can temper our zeal so that we don't have to knock into people all the time. We don't have to knock them off in order for us to be in our own zeal. But it is so important that we allow our zeal to have some sort of an outlet, to have some sort of expression. So where are you playing small? That's the big question. What are you devoted to? And where are you playing small? Where are you letting some small idea, because you're so worried that you might look arrogant or too big for your britches, or, oh, that space within, I feel it within me, right? Where it feels like, oh, I can't do that. Oh, no, they can do that, but I'm the exception somehow. Everyone else has those capacities, and not me. If anybody really knew me, they would know that I don't have that. There are no exceptions in God. We all have capacities available to us, fully accessible in every way to every single person, every single one of us. There is nothing and no one that is outside the realm of what is possible. I love this quote too. Zeal is a volcano, the peak of which the grass of indecisiveness does not grow. And this is why we resist zeal too, because you have to make a choice. You're making a choice. You can't sort of sit there in the idea world of, well, maybe this, or maybe that, or maybe there. You're actually making a choice. The grass of indecisiveness does not grow. So this is the very famous quote by Charles Fillmore, which I'm going to close with here. I fairly sizzle with zeal and enthusiasm and spring forth with a mighty faith to do the things that ought to be done by me. I'm going to say that one again. I fairly sizzle with zeal and enthusiasm and spring forth with a mighty faith to do the things that ought to be done by me. This is another reason why we don't access our zeal. Because we think that we have to do it all. We think that everything is ours to do, personally. Little me, little personality DeeAnn is going to have to like fix everything, change everything, shift everything. The things that ought to be done by me. And again, this is where we weave in the other powers. We have wisdom for discernment, right? We have all of these other powers that we can access that support us. So that we always say here in Unity that we begin by listening. And it is from that receptive space that we launch ourselves into the doing. And when we work in that cycle, we never get drained. We never get tired, we never get lethargic, we are continually renewed and rejuvenated and regenerated. So, let's take this into our time of meditation.